Here in this video, we're going to tackle pricing installation type work. So by install work, we mean a job where we're going to, sort of like construction or installation, a job we're going to go in, build something, and then leave. And it may be one day and it might be multiple days, but it's sort of a one-time, go in, do it, and then we're done. It's not like service. If you're going to build a mowing estimate or you're going to build a snow plowing estimate, you probably don't want to watch this video. You want to watch the service estimating video. That's good for, built for recurring type work. Now this is an installation bid, and we've already created a new bid. If you want information on how to make a new estimate, watch the Creating a New Estimates video. Now we need to add pricing to this new estimate. So what I'm going to do is go up here and I'm going to click the Work Areas and Pricing tab. Now in the Work Areas and Pricing tab, first I want to look at the budget I'm using. So just make sure you're using the right budget. Here it's going to show you the budget name and the overhead recovery method we're using. Now we picked that with our default budget when we made an estimate, but you should confirm that you're always using the right one. It is important. If you ever want to change the budget or override the overhead recovery factors, you can do so here. But I'd highly recommend that you never change this unless you get explicit confirmation or instructions from your owner. There are situations where you will want to change this, and situations where it makes sense to reduce or customize your labor factor on overhead recovery. But those are more advanced scenarios. We'll get through that at another time. Just make sure you got the right budget picked and the right overhead recovery picked here. Now I want to start pricing work. And the way estimates are priced are based on what we call work areas. Work areas are really just subtotals on the estimate. Oftentimes when you're doing an installation type estimate for a customer, you don't want the whole price lumped up in one lump sum. We can do that, and that's one of the ways we can show an estimate report. But very often, contractors do something like front patio, and the price is X. And the walkway to the front patio, and that has a different price. And the driveway, and that has a price. So there's some price breakdown for the client based on subtotals. And a subtotal is a work area. So anytime you want a different subtotal on an estimate, you want to add another work area. So what we need to do first to get started with pricing is add a work area. You can't just add prices to this estimate. Everything has to be contained within at least one and possibly multiple subtotals or work areas. So I'll add my first work area and I need to name it. So we're going to build a driveway here. So I'll call this one driveway, and then an ID, which is completely optional. Really, you don't need this much for residential jobs, but if you are doing bid build or commercial work, oftentimes that bid will have an ID number, or the bid line item will have an ID number. That's what I'm going to use there. Cost code will be the service item that we want to allocate the revenue for this estimate to go to in QuickBooks. When we get to exporting to QuickBooks, you can set up service items as departments or service items as ways to classify revenue and expenses in QuickBooks. And here's where I would pick where I want that revenue to go. In this case, it's a driveway, so I'm going to pick hardscaping. Now I can make some notes here. These aren't notes that'll come out on a proposal. These are just notes for the estimator or anyone looking at it, but that would go here. If I wanted these notes to go on the customer proposal and crew instructions, I could click that here and here. But for right now, I'll leave that blank. I'll get to these later. There's better ways of doing customer notes. So I'll hit OK. And now I've created a driveway. So I've got this driveway as a line item on this estimate. In order to add pricing to this driveway, I need to add the cost of doing the driveway. That is, I need to add labor and equipment and materials and subs, whatever it's going to take to get this driveway done. And to do that, I'm going to hit the edit button over here so that I can see this information, and most importantly, this button over here, add items and templates. Now to add pricing to this driveway, I'm going to click this button here. When I click add items and templates, what element is going to do is open up my estimating catalog, so my list of labor and equipment and materials and subs, so that I can pick for the things that I'm going to need to get this driveway done. For instance, to do a paver driveway, I'm going to need a construction crew, so I'll add them. And when I click the plus button beside the construction crew I want to add, you'll see it flip here into your estimate. Now this crew, and I'll get to the hours later. I like adding my stuff first and then quantifying it. This crew is going to need a truck. So I'm going to go up to the equipment section and I'm going to find the truck. And here I've got crew truck and construction trailer. Now when I click the plus button here again, you'll see it flip into the estimate. So now I'm starting to build my estimate. It needs a crew. It needs a truck and construction trailer. We're doing a driveway, so I may also need a skid steer. So I'm going to click the plus button beside the skid steer and drop that in. Next, I'm going to need materials. So I'm going to go up here to materials. And I like to build estimates in order of the way we're going to do the work. So the first thing I'm going to need is to dispose of the fill that's there currently. So I'm going to do a search for DISP. That's for my disposal. So after I clicked materials and I typed DISP in here, I clicked enter, or I clicked the magnifying glass here, and I can see my different disposal types. It's really handy when you're entering items in your cost catalog to name them all with the starting word the same, so that it's really easy to find and look through stuff later. So I'm going to grab this, and let's say it's clean fill there now. So I'll grab my disposal bin clean fill and the right size bin based on the cost. And again, it'll flip in. Now for materials, I'm going to need some filter fabric. So I'll do a search for fabric and hit search, and I can add that. And then I'm also going to need some gravel. So I'll add that. And I'm going to need 3/4 crusher run. I'm going to need some brick sand. So I'll do a search for brick sand and add that. And I'm going to need any other items like edge restraint. So I've got some snap edge here, and I've got some spikes. I'm also going to need some polymeric sand to sweep between the pavers. So I'll add that. And then I'm going to need the paver, of course. Now I can do a search for the name of the paver, but another way to find materials is to use this over here. When you've entered materials in your estimating catalog, you can put them in categories. So if I want to look in a specific category, I can drop my category down here and go to, for example, my Unilock pavers category. Here I'll scroll down and I'll find the paver I'm looking for. Now note, your results may be on more than one page. So here I've got the end of my list. However, down here, you can see I've got 1 of 4. So I click next, and now I'm on 2 of 4. Also at the top, 2 of 4, 3 of 4. So pay attention to the paging. It may be that the material you're looking for is on a different page. So I'll add the paver I want to add now. And then I could add anything else I wanted to add. When you're done adding all the things you need, and if you add something accidentally, you can always click the delete button here to get rid of it. When you're done adding all the things you need for this driveway, I'm going to get this pane out of my way. So I'll do that by clicking the X button up here. Now it's out of my way, and now I've actually got a lot more information to work with. Here's all the stuff I added to the estimate, the quantity, the units they're measured in, the unit cost, so what it cost me for each unit of these things, and then I get into some pricing stuff. So here's how I'm going to estimate the driveway from here. First thing I need to estimate the hours for the crew. Now my crew is in man hours, and I think 90% of the people watching this video, if you followed our instructions throughout, you're also in man hours. Occasionally people use crew hours. We don't recommend it, but occasionally you do. Most of you will be using man hours. Should be obvious for you. If the cost and the price is around the cost of 1 man hour and the billable rate for 1 man hour, and in this case that's what it is, $50 an hour, should let me know that's about the price for 1 man, not a whole crew. You know I'm estimating in man hours. So how many man hours do I need to do the driveway? Let's just keep things simple. If it's going to be a 4-day job with 3 guys, I'm going to need 3 guys times however many hours a day. And maybe for you it's 8, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 9. I'll say, just to make numbers clean, it's a 10-hour day. So if I need 3 guys for 4 days for 10 hours a day, that's going to be 120 hours. It's 30 hours a day for 4 days. So there's where I got my 120 hours. Now I need a crew truck and construction trailer. Now I don't need 120 hours of the truck. It's only 1 truck for all these people. So I'm going to be there 4 days. I'm going to put 40 hours. Now you could also measure your crew truck and construction trailer in days, and that to me is a lot easier way of doing it, like I did here with the skid steer. So the skid steer I've entered in my cost catalog in days, because that way I just type 4 days. I don't have to do the math on hours. It's easier for equipment that's going to be there more or less 90% of the time for a whole day to enter that equipment in days. And you can change those settings in your estimating catalog under your equipment. Now I go through here. Let's say it's a 1,200 square foot driveway. So I'll add 1,200 to the disposal bin, 1,200 to the filter fabric. And the disposal bin, I might need 3 bins. I'm going to need a crusher run. Now you can pull out your calculator for this, and this is where work area templates come in handy. You can actually do material calculations if you use templates. I'll get to that in a second. But the first thing is I'd want to figure out how much gravel I would need for this. Just to make things quick here, let's say we're going to need about 50 ton of gravel. I've got 4 ton of brick sand. I'm going to need 100 spikes and 100 linear feet of edge restraint. I'm going to need 14 bags of polymeric sand, and then I've got the paver. Now, if it's a 1,200 square foot driveway, great, but don't forget about waste. If you've got any cuts or not going to use every paver, you got to buy pavers in the nearest bundle, then make sure you enter the pavers plus some waste. So I'm going to enter 1,300 square feet. Now you can see here, I've actually started to build a price for this driveway. I've got up down here how much profit I'm making, what my cost is on the driveway, and what my total price is for this driveway. So now it's up to me. I can start changing things if I want by editing the unit prices. Now you can see here the profit. Mine defaults to about 9.7, except for this one, which is at 25. What this is the 9.7, if there's no blue button here, it's telling you that's the default profit margin that your budget's looking for. So when you set up your cost catalog, if you entered something as a default price, that's the default profit margin that's coming out. It's reading your budget and saying, the sales goal for this budget is whatever it is. We need to make this much profit to hit that sales goal. Here is the profit margin you need to add to hit the sales goal. So it's tied very much back to your budget, but it doesn't mean you're limited to that profit. I can make a change to the profit by doing 2 things. I could change the unit price. So to do that, I'm going to click the green button and I'm going to change that like that. Now, if I change this to $40 an hour, my profit drops dramatically. I can also, instead of changing the unit price, just change the profit. So I can do that by clicking the pencil here and saying, I want to make 10% profit. Now watch my unit price change as soon as I click off that. So it calculates if you want to make 10% profit, I'm going to change my unit price to $45.71. I can also change the unit cost on stuff. So if I can get stuff cheaper for this job because of whatever conditions, you can change your cost on anything. So this is how you're going to edit your pricing. Down at the bottom is going to show you after your edits what your profit is, what your cost is, and what your price is. And the nice thing is you'll always be able to see what the estimator edited, because if the estimator did make any changes different than your budget default, you can see here the blue lights up. So if the blue light is on, something's different than the budget default. The other nice thing is if you forget something, so let's say I leave the pavers at 0, that shows up in red. So if anything's in red, it should warn you or prompt you that, yikes, you should make a fix here. Once I put it back to a number, it turns back to black. So now I've got my default costs and prices all set up. There's another easy way to price the driveway if I wanted to get to a specific number. So let's say here I'm at 18,942. Maybe I want to just get it to 19,000. I could go through each unit price and change it, or profit and change it until I got that. That's kind of a complicated way of doing it. The other way you can change your prices is to go up here and say override price. And here I can say 19,000. And what it'll do is automatically and proportionately change all my prices, my unit prices, to get to that 19,000 price. Now, as soon as I do that, it's going to change all my default prices. You can see here, everything changes from a default price now to the price it needs to do to get to 19,000. Now, in this case, it didn't get quite to 19,000. Why wouldn't it get quite? Because the quantity times the unit price just doesn't happen to round to a perfect 19,000. So it gets it as close as it can. If you really want to do that, you can add another item for 9 cents and I can get it right to the 19,000 that I want. The best place to do that is with an other item. When I'm done the driveway and I'm happy with it, what I can do is close it. I might recommend you save your changes at this point, just in case anything happens. And then I might want to make my next thing. So maybe my next thing is a garden. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to hit add work area. And now I'm going to have garden. Now I want the garden to be a separate price. That's why I'm making a separate work area. So they're going to be both on the same estimate, but 2 subtotals. Now that I've got the garden, I'm just going to do the exact same thing. Now templates can come in handy, because if you build a template, I don't have to add all the items individually. I can go templates and I can pick garden bed preparation. And now all the things I need for garden bed preparation come in there. Now I would have to go into materials and start picking the plant material. So I can go to grasses, for instance, and pick the grasses that are going to be part of this job. And then I can go to perennials and pick the ones I want to use there. I could do searches for stuff, but we'll get the basic gist of it. We'll get the stuff in there. When you're ready to start pricing your work, you close that. And now I just quantify the garden. Maybe it's 12 of these, and 24 of these, and 31 of these, and 11 of those. This might take 2 people, let's say 5 hours to install. So we'll say 10 hours. About 5 days or 5 hours of a truck. If I had to prep the bed, like literally dig it out, maybe I could use a skid steer. This is a small garden. So let's say I don't need the skid steer. We'll take that out by clicking the garbage can or the delete button over here. So it's gone. And then I don't need a disposal bin if I'm not taking out dirt. So I get rid of that as well. Soil, I'm going to put how much soil I end up needing in here, and then how many yards of mulch I'll need as well. So let's say it's 4 yards of mulch. So now we've got a price for the garden, assuming that I've got all my plant material, etc. in there. When I'm done with my garden, again, I can do all those same pricing changes that I did before. Note that all my plants come in at a much higher profit margin because that's how I set up my plants in my cost database. So I'll hit save, and now I've got my garden. And I'll just work my way through the estimate, adding work areas. The more work areas I need, the more I'm going to add until I come up with my final estimate. Now, your final estimate numbers, as you build your estimate, start to appear at the top. Here's how many man hours are in this job. Here's my total cost of the job so far. Here's my job's break even. Here's the total price before taxes on the job. And here's the net profit. If I wanted to change the order that these things show up, let's say, for example, I wanted the garden first and the driveway second, then change the sort order for the garden to 1, and then it'll push that. So I can set the order. And if I ever need to go back in here and change something, like let's say, for example, they wanted to expand the garden, or I made a mistake or whatever, just go over to the edit button, click edit, and there's all the stuff you had put in the garden before. So now I can get into my changes. Hit save, and everything's been all updated here. Now there's lots of other features to the estimating. We can look at how to really use templates when we're estimating. We can look at how to build a proposal. We'll do all that in other videos. Just the last couple of notes on this pricing is on this screen, you can do 2 other things. You can set up notes for each one of these items. To set up notes for the items, you're going to click the Edit Notes tab here. So there's Edit Pricing. That's where all my costs and prices are. But if I wanted to make notes on items, let's say I wanted to pick these grasses up at a specific vendor, I could enter the vendor name here. I could copy that vendor name to each one of these. And now I've got an internal note here that lets me know that's where I'm getting those from. I could also make an internal note about the crew or about the equipment if I wanted to. These descriptions will come out on the client notes if you pick an estimate that shows your materials. That's not necessarily the case. For the most part, you're going to want to put client notes up here is where you're going to want to enter your real client notes. And we'll cover that in another video. The last thing you want to look at for pricing is taxes. So if you need to change your sales taxes on something, you're going to click the Edit Taxes button. Now, the Edit Taxes button will have all your default taxes, however you've set up your taxes in estimating. That's under the Item Catalog menu, is where you can set up your tax defaults. Here, I just want to make sure that my taxes are correct. Here's what I'm paying the vendor for purchasing, and here's what I'm charging the customer for sales. If I want to change the tax scenario on an estimate, I can change this here. That's time consuming if it's line by line. If you know some tax changes that are sort of applied to the estimate as a whole, there's an Edit Taxes button up here. And here's where I can set specific taxes. So let's say, for example, on this bid, I don't charge the customer any tax, and I only pay tax on hardscapes and softscapes. So we'll set these to exempt. I want to apply these changes to these work areas, and then I hit OK, and that'll update all my tax settings for the entire estimate in one swoop. That way I don't have to change it on every item. Now I just continue the process. Keep adding work areas until you've built an estimate that's complete and thorough. And when you're done, you're ready to save. Now we'll get into some more fancier pricing using templates, how to create options for this estimate in subsequent videos. I'd encourage you to watch those because those are the videos that are going to have a lot of time-saving tips and show you how to use some of the advanced features of element estimating. We'll also cover analysis and how to print a proposal for a client in the next couple of videos, so stick around.